Are you trying to dominate your fantasy football league? Do you want so many championship rings it's impossible to sign autographs? Well, crack open a beer, pour yourself a glass of bourbon, and settle in, because you've come to the right place. Welcome to Hammercast.
Welcome to the Double D's podcast, which is part of the Hammercast Network. I am your host, Kevin Coleman, and on this episode of the podcast, we have special guest Bonnie FF, Fantasy Football, a.k.a. the Fantasy Queen Bee, who is a writer for Fantasy Pros and for the Fantasy Sake website. Bonnie, I appreciate you coming on, and why don't you tell us either where they can find you, which I just mentioned, or something that you've recently written that they could find.
Well, I just wrote a second edition of my must-have running backs for Fantasy Pros, so that you can find that fairly easy if you just go to Fantasy Pros, the homepage article. It'll be one of the top because that just came out the other day.
Yeah, no, hey, Bonnie, she's Fantasy Pro. I just got on, so I'm just following her path that she blazed for me to get on there. So I'm excited about being on Fantasy Pros and definitely check out her work. I read her running back article work, and it's detailed, way more detailed than my stuff, and you definitely need to check it out. So the reason why we have Bonnie on today and why we're doing this, I know everybody's in free agency mode, but I wanted to really look at undervalued and overvalued dynasty assets because I think sometimes, I fall in this category too. So when we're looking at like guys that I really love. So for example, a guy that I absolutely love is Joe Mixon, but sometimes my love for him can blind me of what he actually is as a football player, because I definitely have that. So I wanted to bring someone on. We're going to go through each position, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, of overvalued and undervalued assets, and kind of what Bonnie does and how she values each position. So that's kind of what we're doing. We're going to start with the quarterback position, and this is all single quarterback leagues. So that's what we're kind of looking at, a single quarterback and going from there. This next year, it seems like there's a big shift in the landscapes of quarterbacks. After the top 12, when I was going through my rankings today, it gets really murky. It gets really, really murky out there. How much do you value having a top quarterback? Because I know some guys wait to draft. Some people will wait to draft a quarterback in leagues and dynasty leagues, especially single quarterback. But is it worth maybe taking that risk?
I think if you can get one of the top 5, 6, it's worth taking the risk if you take them in the first round in dynasty, because there's like 100-point differential from the top tier to the next tier that I was looking at. Mm-hmm. So you definitely have an advantage there, especially in super fast where you got to start too. So, but if you can't snag a top 5, then I would wait a couple rounds. You can end up with somebody like last year was Josh Allen, but sorry, I'm blanking out. What's the kid's name? Tennessee Titans.
Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, you can end up with a Ryan Tannehill. And the differential last year between the top quarterback and Ryan Tannehill was only about 70 points. So if you can't grab, a Deshaun Watson or Lamar Jackson or Pat Mahomes, then you can try to aim for like a Ryan Tannehill. Because you can easily, if that's the case, then load up on the stud wide receivers and running backs in the first couple rounds. And that'll easily make up for the 70-point differential, to the top tier there. So.
Yeah, no, there is, when we're looking at those top tiers, and I was looking at them, I mean, after Tannehill, who I love, I think Tannehill is one of the most underrated assets on teams right now, especially where he's going. It gets really murky. Like, you're going to take Tua, Carson Wentz, Kirk Cousins, Matt Ryan. After that, it's like, I don't know if I want to rely on those guys. Especially single quarterback, right? Like, I actually don't mind reaching. Last year, I did do that. I was in one single quarterback league, and I reached for Lamar, which really kind of killed me, to be honest. But you got to try to hit on the guys that you get, and especially where they're at and their values. So we're going to go. Our first step here is we're going to be talking about overvalued quarterbacks. So what we're going to be looking at, and we're looking at 3 guys. So we have Lamar, Jalen, and my guy, which is Deshaun. And where they're at. So why don't you, Bonnie, tell us one of your overvalued quarterbacks heading into the startup season, what we've seen this year?
Well, I'm a little worried about Jalen Hurts coming off the board as quarterback 11. He only had 4 starts last year, He's unproven. He needs to improve on his turnovers, his accuracy. I understand he has rushing upside. He does have a big arm, so there's a lot of potential there. But his passing grade last year was 57.5. In comparison, Lamar's is 76.9. And I think Lamar even regressed last year. So and the other thing, the Eagles didn't upgrade their receiving corps in free agency. So if you're just going to count on rushing upside, that's a little scary for somebody with only four starts. And, if defenses, they can just load the box if they think he's going to run and try to force him to throw.
Yeah.
So he's got to make an improvement there.
Yeah, I love that you put Hurts because I agree. QB11 that means you want him to be your QB1. If you're drafting him in that later tier rounds, you're waiting for him. That scares me. I don't think the accuracy thing worries me. As a Debbie guy, as someone who I don't have Hurts in any team, and the reason why is because I didn't think he could be actually accurate enough to be a starting quarterback in the league. He looked a little bit better than Carson. He's but did he? Like when you look at the numbers, their defense was bad. He had to throw a ton. I know he has the rushing upside, so I agree on that for some people out there. But if you're looking at him as being your QB1, I'm extremely nervous for you.
Yeah, I would rather take like Lawrence or Burrow. They're going maybe a round or two ahead of him. And I think if you were looking for somebody young with upside, I'd rather go that route than depend on somebody that, could end up just being a bomb at the NFL levels.
I agree. I pulled up some other guys too. So, Ryan Tannehill is QB 14. I'd probably rather swing on Tannehill. Wouldn't you agree? Maybe than Hurts.
Yeah, definitely. He's young, on an upcoming offense. And he's just a little more proven. Like I said, when Hurts was drafted, he wasn't highly valued, and and that's a big red flag for me. So I'd rather, especially in a single quarterback league, like you said, you're counting on him to be your QB1. That's just too much risk for me to take.
That's a lot of risk, especially if he's QB1. I would, Stafford's going around QB 15. Even Baker. I think Baker's an interesting one because Baker might be the one guy that I say I'd rather have Hurts than Baker if he's my QB2. I'm not taking either one of those guys as my QB1. But if he's my QB2, maybe that upside's there. But I could even make a case for like Kirk Cousins, who's actually weirdly a really good fantasy quarterback. He's not the greatest NFL quarterback, but I would rather maybe roll a Kirk Cousins out there in terms of my QB1. And, for example, Jalen Hurts, he finished QB 36, but he didn't play that many games last year. So it's interesting to see, but I do think he's overvalued. So I do agree there. My guy's Deshaun, and I know that this was really before all this kind of news went out. Me and Bonnie had already kind of made this, and I still think I don't know what to. I don't know what to think of the news. I don't know. I want to see it before it plays out. Definitely is there. He's currently going as QB3 though, and even if the news wasn't where it was at right now, I think QB3 is way too high depending on where he's going. Is he going to get moved from Houston? He finished QB6 last year, but that offense got worse, which I didn't know. I don't know. I guess it got worse. It's just not good. That whole system, the whole area, he's not someone that I'm willing to take that high. I know he's probably going to get traded, but then you have the legal issues now. So I just feel like he's always been a little bit overvalued. And out of all, I have an undervalued quarterback that I love that I would take over him all day where I think doesn't get respected. But what do you think of Deshaun?
I love Deshaun. He's actually one of my quarterbacks in one of my dynasty leagues. Mm-hmm. And he's so dependable for fantasy week after week. Mm-hmm. And he's played with, a bad offensive line. He takes a lot of hits, not the best receivers at all times, especially when they shipped DeAndre Hopkins off. Crazy to David Johnson. So I love him. I love having him. I don't know what's going to happen with him this year. I do believe in due process. Mm-hmm. Luckily, I also have Kyler Murray, so I could run with him. If Deshaun doesn't play this year, if he holds out, or if he's suspended or something like that.
Yeah.
But no, he's durable. He plays he plays hurt. You know, I don't know.
I like him too, but the only thing that I worry about is where he's going in terms of value. I think people overvalue him a little bit too. I think that once he does go to a better team, he'll have better weapons, but maybe they'll finally have a rushing attack, and maybe he won't get the volume that we've been seeing. Like, he does have an upside, I guess, rushing, kind of. He doesn't rush for a lot. He does. It depends on the game. But, again, that's because he doesn't have a running back. David Johnson is not good. So stop telling me David Johnson is good. That you got to stop everybody out there, because everybody always say David Johnson is he kills me. He grinds my gears as a running back for fantasy purposes. But I just don't want to take him as my QB3. That's just kind of where I was at. I think he's overvalued in terms of startup right now. And I think some guys, dynasty-wise, overvalue him. Now, you could actually buy him you could buy him cheap right now. But if you have him, I wouldn't be pushing him. What is your take on our guy Lamar? I would love to hear your take here. What's your take on Lamar?
Well, he regressed this year.
Yeah.
They didn't upgrade their wide receivers either in free agency. His passer rating went down from 2019 from 85.3 to 76.9. So he didn't improve on his mechanics. They got worse. He absolutely killed Marquise Hollywood Brown's fantasy value last year. You know, I just think he doesn't go through his reads. I think he's just ready to run. But he ended up QB 10. So where his ADP of QB4 right now is high for somebody who hasn't shown that he can be good passer in this league. You know, I would rather have him than Jalen Hurts this year. You know, because we know he'll end up in the top 12. I'm sure. Yeah, pretty sure. But I wouldn't take him as in my top 5.
Yeah, if you're pushing Lamar, I think Lamar, I mean, a couple leagues I was in, Lamar went in first overall quarterback taken. So he went QB1 over Mahomes last year in some single quarterback leagues I saw because of that rushing upside. I think people just said, hey, but then he regressed so much as a quarterback. I love Lamar, but yeah, he has hurt that. I don't think there's part of that. Mark, brought up, losing Yonda was a huge detriment that wasn't talked about enough. Yeah, no, I agree. They did have some issues. That offensive line wasn't great. They haven't really done enough at that wide receiver position. I'm assuming they're going to bring someone in, and they're going to be bringing in someone in the draft. But it's kind of like that no man's land. I was trying to think about the best Baltimore wide receiver in the past decade. 10, 15 years, it gets pretty barren out there. Maybe Anquan Bolden when he got there, when you look at some of these other guys that came there. And so I get nervous with Lamar. I understand 100% what you're saying, though, with overvalued where he's going. He still maybe finish in the top, but that might be a position where you take a top running back or wide receiver, especially in those kind of draft formats, and getting them there. So any more thoughts on the overvalued guys? I think we hit that one pretty good.
No, I think that we cover those pretty good.
All right, we're going to undervalued now, and shocker or not, but I have a Cowboy on my list. As a Cowboy fan, I had to get him out there. So we got Carson Wentz, Brady, and Dak. So we're looking at our undervalued dynasty assets. I will let you go first and tell me one of your undervalued guys, and we'll go from there.
Well, okay, Brady might be people might question why I have Brady on this list. But that's for people who maybe are win now situations. Mm-hmm. If maybe you do draft Jalen Hurts early, and then you pick up Brady late. But he's a Super Bowl MVP. Yeah. The team's going to try to run it back this year. They re-signed most of their top dogs. So I mean, where he's going, as QB 26, that's nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, he ended up, where did he end up last year? Yeah.
Brady finished as QB 8.
Yeah. So, I mean, come on. I mean, he's a great value there, especially, like I said, if you do go with a young, unproven talent early rounds, Brady would be a great grab in the late rounds to back him up with. And, he plays behind the 5th best offensive line. Just nuts. I could see them going back to the Super Bowl again this year. So
Yeah, no, I think you make a perfect point. If you're going to get a guy like Hurts, get someone like Brady, and then you compare them, especially with the QBs going at. He finished his QB8, guys. It doesn't look like he's slowing down. I know we all expect Brady to slow down, but that dude's going to play till he's 55. Like, I can't change a diaper without hurting my back. That dude plays in football games and wins Super Bowls at his age. It's impressive. I love to see what he can do. He finishes QB8. QB 26 is absurd. Like, just to think of like kind of where he's going around. So around him is like Sam Darnold and Jameis Winston and Jared Goff. Those guys. I don't mind taking him as my second quarterback, right?
Right. No, I mean, I do realize the shelf life is probably going to be a little bit shorter than you'd like in Dynasty, but what a way to back up,
Yeah. And like we mentioned, there's a huge shift in the quarterback landscape too. So like you might take Brady and he's your QB2, but the next 2 years you're gonna have to get these younger guys anyway. So I don't mind jumping on those tracks, trying to win now. I like winning now. I know there's some perennial guys that go out there and rebuild all the time. I'm not like that. I'm gonna try to win. So I understand that viewpoint. I want to talk about my guy Dak because I think he's just disrespected, Bonnie. I don't know what you think about. I have him as my QB3 for Dynasty purposes, and I will stand by that till the day I die. Right now, he's going as QB7. His ADP is around 82. He was the number one quarterback through 5 weeks last year, before he dislocated his ankle. Nothing's changed. They kept their offensive coordinator. Zeke will be back. Their offensive line is going to get healthier. I think they're going to upgrade their offensive line in the draft with the 10th pick. I really believe that. They got CeeDee Lamb, who's probably one of the best wide receivers coming from that class, even though he didn't show it as much last year because he had Andy Dalton throwing him the ball. Sorry, Bears fans. He has, Gallup, who is underrated as well. I love Gallup. He's got Cooper. He's got everything really working for him. If he gets Jarwin back, maybe they upgrade the tight end position. Also, I love Dak. If you can get him as your QB7, if you're getting him in that, 7th, 8th round-ish where he's going, and that could be a league winner, in my opinion.
Yeah, I had him in a league last year, and it was a redraft league, and I was in first place. Totally, I drafted really well. But then, of course, he suffered the injury. Then I turned around. I saw Zeke play 1 week without that. I traded Zeke for Justin Herbert straight up. Everybody laughed at me. Guess what? Guess who made the playoffs? Yeah. I always loaded at running back, so But talk about crushing. Like I said, I made the playoffs, but I probably would have won the championship if I still had Dak and Zeke, because Zeke did pick things up in the latter half of the year last year. So, he is undervalued, but people are always afraid of injuries. Maybe sometimes too much. It's overreaction in my mind.
Yeah, I think that Dallas thing, I think people also they don't want to say that he's a top 5 quarterback and not necessarily fantasy, but they have that perspective of him as not being that. He's overpaid. Whatever. He's a great fantasy option. Especially, let me tell you guys, as a Dallas fan, our defense is terrible and we're not doing anything to fix it. In free agency, nothing. We're going to have to score points. And so I think he's a huge option. I think if you get him as QB7, as your QB1, that's incredible value. What do you think of Carson Wentz? Because I know you added Carson Wentz here. He's probably one of the most hotly debated quarterbacks we've seen in the last year or two. Why do you think he's a value?
Well, first of all, he's going from one of the worst offensive lines to the 7th best. Philadelphia, I don't know if a lot of people even realize this, their offensive line was so beat up last year. They had 5 starters going in a game at points last season. He's going to, like I said, the 7th best offensive line and a team that actually wants him. Part of Carson's problem is he lost a lot of confidence after the injuries he suffered. And then they had struggles with the offensive line. They didn't have any, very many weapons for him. Zach Ertz got hurt. He basically had Goddard to throw to, Dallas, which I love Dallas Goddard. I'm very high on him as well. But, when that's your only option, it's easy to double team him.
And he was banged up too.
I'm sorry?
I said Goddard was banged up too. He was injured.
Right. Yeah, he was injured at times too. And then they went and drafted Hurts in the second round of the draft. So that's got to be crushing to your soul.
Yeah.
So, he was a great quarterback before he got hurt. I think if he's put in the right system, but it has a sporting team, I think he can be right back up there. He's definitely in the top 12, and his ADP of 20 is it's way too low for somebody who's surely going to end up top 12 this year.
Yeah, he finished as QB21 last year without playing the last 4 games. So realistically, he was a QB2, right? So that's kind of where your realistic expectations. Maybe some people, they draft him as a QB1. Well, that's kind of your fault. I don't think that roster really was set up for him to be a QB1. But, I love the shade you're throwing at Travis Fulgham, right? 3-week wonder, baby. Everybody was drafting that guy. But, yeah, I get it. Like, I think he's going in the perfect spot. He's got one of the best running backs in the country. Especially in the league with Taylor. He's got better weapons around him. I think they may add a piece. I love my boy Paris Campbell. Come on, Paris, just stay healthy for me so that you can get in that slot, which I think Wentz will be there. So, yeah, I agree. QB20, grab him as your QB2, and that value's there. I even like Carson Wentz at Superflex leagues. I don't mind grabbing Carson as my QB2/3, depending on how the draft plays out. So I absolutely love that call. I think Carson can finish higher. I actually think he's a better quarterback than people give him credit for. I think he gets a lot of crap, like you said, but he had a lot of issues last year, and he had a lot of things going on for him. So I don't mind drafting him and getting him.
Deshaun Watson got hurt the first week. They traded away his best wide receiver, Nelson Aguilar.
Yeah.
So what are they expecting from him?
Yeah, so. And you can't underestimate how dysfunctional Philly was. They're just dysfunctional, and so that's part of it there too. So what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about some overvalued running backs, and we're going to be talking about these guys and where they're at. So here's our overvalued. We got our guy Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, and CEH. So I'm gonna definitely throw some CEH shade out there for everybody that's out there. But why don't you go ahead and go first, Bonnie? Tell me one of your guys, Jacobs and Montgomery. What do we have there?
Well, Josh Jacobs, his ADP is currently running back 13. I know some of that was because the ADP will probably level off a little bit now that free agency has passed. We didn't know what was going to happen, but it's actually I think it's going to drop a little bit because they added Kenyon Drake.
Yeah.
I don't know if people realize this, but he only averages 1.3 PPR points per touch. So he's a volume-based running back. John Gruden's never really liked bell cow running backs. They're using them as bell cows. Yeah. Now Kenyon Drake's been signed, so he's going to take touches from him. So I definitely feel his value's, been hurt by that signing.
Yeah, I have one share of Jacobs, and there's really nothing I can do about it now. He's kind of stuck on my roster for right now. I think the thing that always makes me upset about Jacobs is his usage. And Gruden just drives me crazy. Like Devontae Booker was getting carries. That should have warned a lot of people. Like, come on. Like, I was actually starting Booker in some flex leagues and some bigger leagues because I knew he was going to get some goal line carries, and I was devastated with injuries. So, running back 13 makes me nervous. I don't even know if they have an offensive line right now. I know they have like a center, and then after that, they've gotten rid of basically that entire line. I just don't know what to do with him, and I'd rather have guys that are going after him, Miles Sanders, Jones, Najee Harris, Eckler, who is highly underrated, guys like that. I'd much rather have than Josh Jacobs, and that's kind of where I have. I'm interested to see what you think of mine. CEH is someone I have no shares of. I always thought that he was the guy that landed in the perfect spot, but he's not a good running back. I always thought he was just a very average runner. Last year I saw him go ahead of Christian McCaffrey in a league. That's what happened last year.
Yeah, it did.
It was insane. I'm just like, hey, and I still remember this, and I put it out on social media. I said, hey, if you have CEH on a dynasty team, trade him now because this is as much as his value is going to be. And I remember I had some big industry guys tell me I was an idiot, and now I'm like, oh, okay. Well, now you see where his value has dropped. Now I think it's going to level off. I don't think it's as bad as what people saw last year, and again, I think that he's pretty much where he's at. But the reason why I don't like CEH in that offense is because they're a high-volume passing offense. That's Mahomes, Hill. He's going to look to get it out quick. Kelsey, those guys, they're going to take targets away. And Andy Reid he's a running back by committee guy. You've seen a shift. Unless they have talent like Hunt and Brian Westbrook back in the day at the Eagles, I don't think CEH equals that talent. And right now, CEH is going at running back 16. His ADP is around 27. So I understand kind of the mindset where that's not a terrible value. So don't get me wrong. I don't think that's a terrible value. But again, I'm taking Eckler over him. I don't mind taking Travis Etienne, maybe depending on landing spot. Joe Mixon. And I know I'm a Joe Mixon guy. We'll talk about that. But those guys I'd rather have over CEH. What are you doing with CEH?
Probably avoiding him a little bit. I hate to say it. Well, in his defense, they also had a banged up offensive line last year. But the thing, I mean, when you're given the ball at the 1 yard line 4 times and you can't get it into the end zone, I mean that's concerning. I do think he'll be better this year. I was a little surprised they didn't retain Damian Williams.
Yeah.
I really thought they were going to go with CH Damian Williams. So it's hard to say what all they're thinking about doing in that backfield. But I think that's a good spot for him. I don't think I'd want him as my RB1. I'd be very happy to have him at RB2, especially with his upside. I do think he'll have a better year. But like you said, it is a passing offense. And Mahomes, too, does take some touches from him because with his legs as well. But they're high-flying offense in the air, so.
And they like to get those jet sweeps and those crossing routes and again the Hill. They like to get him the ball as much as possible. I don't mind it, but I just like you just said, we get worried about his touchdowns, and he's kind of was a touchdown dependent back last year, right? Like the games that he scored over 20 points or over 15 PPR wise, he scored touchdowns. So that makes me worried because if you're a touchdown dependent back, but you can't score in the goal line and you're 5'7", 207. Those things just kind of always have been a red flag to me. And that's why I've kind of been away from CEH. I've always kind of been away from CEH. I know there's some people that, you're going to be talking about David Montgomery. He's going after CEH. And so I might even argue maybe David Montgomery is a better play, but then they sign Andy Dalton and now I'm done with the Bears. I don't know what to do with them anymore. But, David Montgomery finished as running back 6. Which now that I feel like some of those stats were a little bit misleading because he had a great second half against terrible defenses. But why do you think he's overvalued? What do you think about David Montgomery?
Well, the same reason you just said. He played against 4 of the worst rushing defenses in the last 6 games. Then that's when he put up his really big numbers last year. Also, Tyreek Cohen's coming back. They love him there, so he's probably not going to be utilized in the passing game as much. I don't know. Part of me, I like David Montgomery. Part of me wants to believe, but I just can't see taking him any higher than a low RB2, maybe upside RB3. And like you said, Andy Dalton. I can just see the Bears being behind so much in games, and
that line's not great either. So let's not pretend like they're getting back there. No, I get it. But David, he's a running back 3 for me. Like if I'm drafting him, if I have to rely on him as my running back 2, even though he did finish high, based on what we saw, I'd be a little bit nervous. And when you're looking at his numbers, and I think the Tyreek Cohen thing's a real legit concern because he got 68 targets last year in the passing game. That's not happening again. That's probably what you think that's going to get cut in half, probably.
David Montgomery's, yeah, for sure, yeah, because Tyreek was out for most of the season, so.
Yeah, no, he was pretty much out. So I would assume Cohen's going to get half of those targets, if not more. So you're going to really see that upside go down. So you're looking at Montgomery being a 10 to 12 fantasy point, 15 maybe, reliable, but nothing like, oh my God, I got to get this guy. So I agree. I think that there could be, depending on where you draft him, he definitely could be an overvalued kind of running back there. Now, before we kind of move on, because I definitely skipped this part, but we can talk about it now. Are you a believer in zero running back strategy at all? Because I'm a zero running back guy, but are you a running back hoarder? Is that how you kind of build your teams, or are you kind of in between?
I'm kind of in between. I wouldn't say I'm a hoarder, but I do value the position because of position scarcity, especially when if you don't get like one of the top 10 running backs, I mean, the drop off is just, you're just going to be looking at the waiver wire or streamers from week to week if you don't have at least one. I like to usually leave a draft with at least 2 running backs in the top 3 rounds and 3 in the first 5 rounds of the draft usually.
No, that's a great point. Especially, I would say that I'm not going to be as much as a zero running back this year, just because after, like you said, there's a big tier drop. I would say around 21-ish. So after like Kareem Hunt, which is kind of going in there, once you get to like guys like Ronald Jones, Carson, Gordon, Drake, Damian Harris, Najee, we don't know where he's at yet. Leonard Fournette, it gets a little crazy out there. So you definitely got to grab some guys, and that's good. It leads us into our kind of our undervalued guys. So what we're going to look at is some undervalued running backs out there. You know, for me, it's a couple guys. I got to include a guy mix in. You got Chuba Hubbard. He's making an appearance. We're talking about rookies today, and then Aaron Jones. And why don't you go ahead and talk to us about one of these guys?
Well, Aaron Jones, his ADP right now is 15, but a lot of that had to do with the uncertainty of where he was going to land. Yeah. Now that he's in Green Bay, he's going to move right back up. I mean, he's just an utter beast. He was RB5 last season. He averages over 5 yards per carry. So that's kind of cheating by saying he's undervalued, because like I said, that ADP is going to level off now that we know he's going to be back in Green Bay.
But he might even be undervalued even though that happens, right? Like, yes, he's back in Green Bay, but you could argue that he could be a top 5 running back. I mean, he finished running back 5 last year, but people aren't going to draft him like that.
Yeah, that's true. But, I'm trying to think, who would you take before him? All right, well, let's put the rookies aside for a second.
Yeah.
There's CEH, Barkley, Kamara, Henry.
What would you – Jonathan Taylor? Would you take Taylor before you take it, Jones?
I love Jonathan Taylor. I think he's going to be top 3 this year. He's one of my top targets.
It gets interesting. Like Chubb, what are you, Chubb or Aaron Jones for you, Bonnie?
Aaron Jones.
Okay. That's about where the line's at. That's about at 7. So about 7-ish. I think that's a pretty good ADP. That's probably where his ADP is going to be.
Yeah. I mean, he's a true bell cow too. Well, he enough to where he can get he's still, even if he doesn't get the volume, like I said, he averages over 5 yards per carry. So
yeah,
he's still going to get you the fantasy points, whether somebody cuts into his work time or not. I know Dylan's there. Jamal Williams is gone, but I don't see them using Dylan any more than they did Jamal Williams last season, and he ended up top 5. So.
No, I mean, I think that's fair. No, I agree. I'm not, AJ Dillon has the great hamstrings, but I'm not out here saying he was my guy. I never thought he was running back 1. I'm glad we're done with that already. So no, I think Jones could finish top 5 again, and you're getting a talent. Maybe you could be getting him as your second running back if you're on the turn. And that's a heck of a value right there, like you said about these running backs and what you try to do there. My guy is Mixon. I'll keep it simple because I talk about Mixon way too much in podcasts and stuff. But hey, you know what? His ADP right now is to me, he's going as running back 21. And where you're at, I think finally the value is here. Like Mixon has been overdrafted for 3 years, it feels like, and now he's getting underdrafted. I feel like just slightly. If he is your running back 3, that has potential running back 1 upside. If he's your running back 2, that's, I think, okay too. But I think what happened to some guys is they made him the running back 1, and then it turned into, hey, he's not producing. I know he only played in 7 games last year. I know he's had these kind of issues, but hey, they're getting a better offensive line, hopefully, with that 5th pick. I agree that he has underperformed, so I'm not going to make excuses for him. He's underperformed. But I finally think his ADP is where his value is. Would you agree with that, or you think I'm crazy that I'm actually thinking about drafting Joe Mixon again?
No, I love Joe Mixon. I've always loved Joe Mixon. I always thought he was undervalued, and he has performed well even with the troubles at O-line. There's an upgrade there at quarterback with Joe Burrow. So people won't. The defenses can't stack the box like they could before. Yeah, at that value, I'll take him all day long.
Yeah,
he's still young too. He's only. How old is Mixon? Like, I want to say 26, 27.
Oh, I think he's, you know what? I think I'm aging myself here, but I think he's definitely, I think he's 24. So he's still young.
That's weird. It seems like he's been in the league a lot longer.
Yeah, his bad play and his overdraftedness have kind of gotten him. He feel like he's been here we talked about Mixon for 7 years. But yeah, he's 24. He's a young asset, and especially with the running back landscape, I don't hate it where he's going. When you're looking at startup wise, as far as running backs goes, I'd rather have Mixon than AJ Dillon, who's going running back 23. James Robinson, I'd rather have Mixon. I know that's sacrilegious to my James Robinson truthers out there, but I would rather have Mixon in that that category. What did you see in Hubbard? So you put Chuba in here. He's going to run back 31. He's a rookie. He's an incoming rookie. We don't know his landing spot yet, but and he's kind of been his draft stock's dropped. But what do you see in him?
Well, I know the concern is that his production had dropped off so much from 2019 to 2020. But the thing is about Hubbard is he's an outside zone runner. Mm-hmm. Okay. And Oklahoma State went away from that last season. I think if he can land on a team like San Francisco or the Jets, who heavily use outside zone rushing scheme, he could be such a value at that ADP. In fact, he reminds me a lot of Mostert. Now, Mostert's a little bit better of a back, I would say, but he's a lot like him. Where they're best at going east to west. Hubbard needs to improve on his pass pro, but once he hits that open field, man, he has Olympic sprinter speed. He's just, like I said, if he lands in the right spot, he is going to be probably a gold mine for somebody in fantasy.
Yeah,
somebody who's not. I mean, you're not really taking when you're looking at somebody in that draft range.
Yeah,
I'll take a chance on upside. That's how you win leagues. Taking people like that who are just so undervalued, and if they have the chance to perform, why not? I mean,
Yeah, no, I mean, he's going in that range. So Chuba Hubbard from Oklahoma State, like Leonard Fournette, I'd rather have Hubbard because at this point, Fournette's not a guy that I really want on my rosters. Melvin Gordon, I mean, if you're win now, I could see it. Or if you're in a draft, or if hey, can I go grab him for an asset? Maybe. But, Hubbard, if he can go, I have a friend named Jacob Dunn, and he's a big Broncos guy. He wants to go to the Broncos. I think that would be an interesting spot for them. They run the scheme that we're talking about. They have an opening now. We're going to see Lindsey go away. That makes almost too much sense. So I know the Broncos won't do it, but that would be a great spot for him. And you could have legitimate dynasty upside for your running back. So I like Hubbard. I think that he definitely had a down year, but not as down as everybody said it was. Like, he still has the value. He has the burning speed. He does have very good vision. I like him as a runner there. But I think he had such a good year 2 years ago that people thought, oh, well, he's got to recreate that. And I think that just hurt him, but I don't necessarily think it's his fault.
It's like a reverse the hype of CEH from last year, kind of.
Yeah, no, I mean,
go ahead.
No, that's a great. I mean, that's a great call, right? Now it's like, who can you kind of find? I'd rather take the shot at an upside like Hubbard than try to get CEH, and then you get kind of, oh, well, he's not my running back one. Well, if Hubbard does anything past your running back 4, that's a good value.
Right, exactly.
So that's kind of where I'm going. Now we're gonna shift the gears a little bit to wide receivers. Chris Carson's another guy. He has been undervalued points per game the last 2 years. He just re-signed with the Seahawks. I think that is a good call if you're in a win now, or if you're trying to find that late round guy. Chris Carson could be around that area. He's going to running back 26 right now, so that's just someone to shout out there. We're going to go to our dynasty wide receivers now, and the biggest thing is when I find out wide receivers, and the question I said, man, the wide receiver position is just saturated with talent. It's got so much talent from the top down. When you go into startups or you're looking at dynasty leagues and you're trying to acquire them, I feel like you can be pretty subjective here and not have to reach for them. How do you feel about wide receivers right now in the fantasy landscape?
I feel the exact same way you do. The position is so deep. I mean, you can get, like a Chenault or something like that. That's digging a little deep. But if you look at some of these ADPs, I mean, I would definitely, it's super flex especially. I mean, grabbing quarterbacks and the running back.
Yeah.
Probably overall dynasty wide receivers is my last priority over anything because the position is so deep. Like I said, I'd rather in the top 5 rounds, ideally, I'd like to have a quarterback, 3 running backs, and a wide receiver going into the 6th round.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and I would say probably that wide receiver would be like the 4th, 5th. That's kind of where I'm looking at is where I'm drafting my first wide receiver. the Michael Thomas thing, burned a lot of guys, and you see that with wide receivers. You never know. Here are our overvalued wide receivers. So here are the guys that we're looking at. Juju, don't worry, I didn't put him, so we're going to let Bonnie explain herself there. Amari Cooper, I definitely put Amari Cooper on this list, and I don't care what anybody says there. And then Julio. So if we're looking at our kind of overvalued guys, what is up with Juju? What do you think with him? He's a frustrating kind of asset to own. And he's in that purgatory. He's overvalued by their owners and undervalued by not the owners. So what do we think of Juju?
I think that's part of the problem. He finished as wide receiver 16 last season, but I think with Deontay Johnson and Chase Poole, I think there's just going to be more focus on those two for some reason. There's just been the evolution with them, and Juju's just been too inconsistent. Ever since Antonio Brown, left. He had become the alpha. He's not a true number one in my mind. I wouldn't mind having it as my 2. In Dynasty, you also have to think about, is this going to be Big Ben's last season? Who's going to be Juju's quarterback now that we know he's staying with the team? I love him as a person. I love the story about how his bicycle was stolen and all that. But I just don't want him as my wide receiver 1.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. When you look at last year, what Claypool had, he had 109 targets, and that's insane for a rookie and what he did. And then you look at Deontay, he had 144 targets. And then you look at Juju, and you're like, well, hey, can Juju keep that up? And especially with, I don't know how Big Ben's going to do next year. His arm looked kind of dead last season. I was surprised he was coming back. Juju had 128 targets. That's a ton of targets between them. But you got to also remember they had no rushing attack. Like James Conner was not good. They didn't really have anybody else. Benny Snell, you can say whatever you want about Benny Snell, but he's not. Trust me, he's not the answer there. If they do upgrade the position, which I'm assuming they will, that's going to take away some targets too. And I think Juju might be the odd man out in that offense. I love Deontay. He's actually my wide receiver 12 for dynasty purposes. That's how much I love Deontay Johnson. So I agree that Juju has a weird role. I will say him just signing a 1-year deal, I think helps his value a little bit, because even if he does kind of have like a middle tier year, if he does sign somewhere next year, you might be able to get rid of him, and you might, if depending on where he goes, or maybe his value will go up. But I agree, Juju is someone that, he's going at ADP around like the 3rd to 4th round. He is not going to be my wide receiver 1 I'm drafting. Like I won't do it. He's not going to be that guy for me. Amari Cooper is another one, and I'm interested to see. I don't like Amari Cooper. I never have. He finished as wide receiver 14 last year, and I get it. And he played with Andy Dalton and the same kind of crew that we were talking about, Ben DiNucci, all those guys. He's going as wide receiver 17, so he's going a little bit right before that. But again, I think it depending on where you take your wide receivers, that means that Amari Cooper might be your wide receiver 1. And that scares the heck out of me. Like, I don't know about you, but I think he's very inconsistent as a dynasty asset there. And especially with Gallup, who I think is very talented. And then also I think CD is going to take that next step. And you're going to see that, hey, that next step with those targets that he's going to get. He did get a ton of targets with Dak being there, so I understand the targets were there. But that's because Dak didn't really get that offseason program with CD and Gallup and those kind of system. I worry about Cooper. I think he's a fine wide receiver, but if you're drafting him as your wide receiver 1, I think your dynasty team is going to hurt. What do you think of Cooper?
I agree with you. I just think he's the odd man out in that offense. I think Gallup, to me, is somebody that, I think you're going to get into him undervalued.
Mm-hmm.
I think the two benefits and that benefit, the two receivers that benefit the most in that offense are CeeDee Lamb and Gallup. I think Cooper, who is it? Cooper and trying to think. They compete too much for the slot position, or I think he'll lose out in that.
Well, I think CD can move there in Gallup, and then you're going to have, now you're testing my Dallas Cowboy depth chart here. Cedric Wilson gets in there sometimes and steals some targets. So, and even Jarwin coming back, I think will steal targets too.
Right, and so I just think that he's just the one who's going to be overlooked, kind of like the Juju situation in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree there. What do you think of? So you put Julio on here. Do you think it's just people are overvaluing what Julio used to be, and then now they're kind of drafting him at that same part?
Yeah, Calvin Ridley, he went, well, first of all, he went from wide receiver 3 in 2019 to the overall wide receiver 53 last year. I mean, the emergence of Calvin Ridley, he's never really been a touchdown scorer, at least not, not in the last half of his career. I'd rather, in that range, he's going at wide receiver 32, I'd rather get a Jalen Waddle, Deebo Samuel, Laviska Shenault, somebody who has upside rather than somebody who's 32 years old. Wide receivers drop off a cliff at age 31, which happened to him last year. So I just don't see much of a value there.
Yeah, I agree. I'm staying away from Julio. And if you have him on your dynasty roster, you might have to take a hit. If you're trying to trade him, you might have to give up a second and just say, can I get a second for him? The time to trade Julio was 2 years ago, and now you're going to have to take a loss. And that's the game we play, especially with Dynasty. You got to learn it. It's like the stock market. You got to know these stocks and where they're going. Now, as far as undervalued, we have some great undervalued wide receivers. We have a lot. I don't know if we're going to touch on every one of them, but, Allen Robinson, my guy Tyler Boyd, Robert Woods, who I feel like is always undervalued, and then Robbie Anderson, who I thought was a steal last year in some drafts. There's a lot of guys on here. I'll let you take it away. Who is an undervalued guy that you absolutely love that you feel like you need to get on your dynasty team?
Well, if we're not going to be able to touch on all of them, I want to talk about Robbie Anderson going as wide receiver 60. That's nuts. That's just disrespectful. He finished as wide receiver 19 in his first season with the Panthers. He had the 10th most targets among wide receivers last year.
Yeah.
And now there's no Curtis Samuel. The only receiver they added in free agency was David Moore. He's not going to be a factor. So it's just nuts. Even if it's Teddy Bridgewater, if they draft a rookie, I mean, that kind of production, that late in drafts, like it's a wide receiver 19. Even if his targets dropped, what is he going to be? He's still probably going to be a top 24 wide receiver or close to it.
Yeah.
So that's just a value. That's just crazy.
No, I love it. That's just disrespectful. It is kind of, right? Like Christian Kirk is going around, and what has Kirk done that Robbie Anderson hasn't done? Like those are the guys that you're just like, hey, Robbie played pretty well. They're going to probably upgrade that quarterback position. That's going to help Robbie. I mean, I know he gets targeted a bunch by Bridgewater, but bringing in a better quarterback that can actually hit some deep balls and actually get it to Robbie in those instances, I think is going to help him. I love their offense that they're in. I love their system. I love their coaches. I agree. Robbie was a guy that I was drafting all last year, 22nd round. I think I got him in one league, 23rd round in Superflex leagues. It's just unheard of. And now he gave me wide receiver 2 numbers. I'll take that value all day. And he's still disrespected, right?
Right.
It's just crazy. Robbie's a big under me. We might get to all of them. We'll see. Tyler Boyd is mine. I don't know about you, but that dude is just generally just underrated. Right now his ADP is 69, so his wide receiver 35. And again, you're still looking at a wide receiver 2 capabilities, right? And I think with Burrow being there in that offense, T. Higgins' emergence helps Tyler because you're going to be playing in the slot. When you look at Boyd, I think he's definitely a guy you got to draft. He's just someone that I want all on my rosters. Guys like, Cooper Kupp's going around him. Will Fuller is getting drafted kind of around where he goes. Terrace Marshall, who hasn't even played a snap, is getting drafted right around where Tyler Boyd goes, which I don't agree with. I think Tyler Boyd is someone that you definitely got to draft, but you can also trade for him right now. He's actually pretty cheap. I got him for a second round, a late second in one Superflex league. I'll take Tyler Boyd for a late second in my Superflex leagues.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I love T. Higgins, but now that AJ Green's no longer there, yeah, that's a no-brainer around that area. But again, I can't believe some of these wide receivers. Maybe that just shows you how deep the wide receivers, so the position is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Well, hey, we had a question here, and I think it's good to kind of cover with Robbie. How many targets go away with a healthy CMC and more rushing attempts? I think that's a valid. I'll let Bonnie kind of answer that. But, with CMC coming back, we are going to see more target incomes to him and some more rushing attempts. But do you think that necessarily hurts his value based on where he's going?
No, actually, I don't, because Robbie is more of a field stretcher. So the touches that he would get are not the type of touches that are going to go to CMC. CMC is not running, 20 yards down the field catching balls. So, well, he can, but that's more of Robbie's forte. So he might hurt a little bit, but like I said, he's more the deep threat there. So I could still see him getting around the same number of targets, especially if they get an upgrade at quarterback. And that was actually where I wanted Deshaun Watson to go, but
yeah. Well, we'll see about where that goes. No, but I think, when we're talking about those vacated targets, I think that, CMC will eat into that. But again, you got to look at where Robbie's going. If he's going as wide receiver 60, even if he gets those targets vacated, he can still finish as a wide receiver 3-4. And even then, it's still value. So just based on kind of where he's at, again, even in Dynasty right now, you might want to try to sell him. Maybe his value is about where you want it to be to sell him. But trust me, people aren't buying him either because they have this mindset that he's not really that good. And so you might as well just keep him, incorporate that value to your team. Who's another guy that you had? I know you had a couple more, and that's perfectly fine. One guy I absolutely love. Allen Robinson is my guy. Like, I love Allen Robinson. I don't think he's had a good quarterback. Blaine Gabbert may be his best quarterback he's played with. Do we think he's going to be okay in that Bears offense?
I do. I know a lot of people are worried about Andy Dalton, but, he's never played with elite passer. He finished as wide receiver 9 last year when the Bears were trotting out the Mitch Trubisky, Nick Foles tandem. So, not that Andy Dalton's much better, but he's just proven over and over again. He has not ever played elite passer, and he does nothing but produce. And do you realize he had over 150 targets last year? That's insane. Yeah.
I think that's where his value lies, right? Is his targets and his PPR.
Right, because you figure a lot of your top targets, they see around 125, So you're talking about almost nearly 2 more targets a game on average. Like you said, that's where he does gain a lot of his value. So.
Yeah, he got 151 targets, and when you look at him, I think his catching, he had 3 games last year, had 10 or more catches, and so for PPR, that's incredible value. I think they didn't really upgrade. I like Darnell Mooney, Tariq Cohen coming back, eating a little bit, but they're still going to target the heck out of Allen Robinson. As long as he wants to be there, he's your wide receiver 1. He can put up those numbers just because of the targets that he gets. And in reality, when you look at his season last year, he had 2 games where he finished under 10 PPR points. That's it, 2 games. And that was the last game of the year, which didn't matter anymore. And I guess it kind of mattered, but it didn't really at that point of the season. And in the second game against New York Giants, those are only 2 games that he had under 10 points per game in PPR format. So I agree that he's undervalued. And then Robert Woods, what can you say about Robert Woods that we don't already say? And especially, it's interesting that his ADP is where it's at based on Stafford being there, right? Isn't that kind of? I thought it would maybe raise his ADP, but I didn't see a big bump.
No, I think it would too. Jared Goff is not exactly a deep ball passer, but highly inaccurate. And I'm sorry, Robert Woods did well with Goff. Mm-hmm. And in fact, Goff's numbers regressed even last year. Matthew Stafford, he's a much, he has a bigger arm. It's a high passing offense, Matt LaFleur's offense. Yeah, I don't understand that. I think of the way Matt Stafford plays and in that offense, I think really favors Robert Woods getting more of the targets this year over like a Cooper Kupp. So I don't understand that at all.
No, I think that Stafford being in that offense, and especially, I think, Robert Woods could probably take that Marvin Jones / Golladay kind of. I think Golladay is a better example of this where, I think that, and I know this would be sacrilegious for, recently, I think that Stafford, this would maybe be one of the best receivers, not counting Calvin Johnson, but these guys that he's had with this, I think Robert Woods could benefit from that. And he's only 28. He's still a young dynasty asset. So we're talking about probably I always do my dynasty teams 3 years out. He's someone that I would definitely want on my dynasty team for where he's going in terms of that ADP, wide receiver 32, finished at wide receiver 12. And it's crazy. We always think about, hey, when we think of Robert Woods, we don't think about a wide receiver 1. He is. He's a wide receiver 1 that gets drafted like a wide receiver 3 every dang year. So,
the offense is just going to be better with Stafford. I mean, it's not going to be huge leap, but I mean, it's definitely going to be better. And especially, like I said, for somebody who can take a top off the defense like Robert Woods.
Yeah, and that offensive line will get rebuilt. They'll fix that. They have Akers there, Henderson. They have everything really you want. And, Higbee is whatever, but he's an average tight end that will do fine in that offense. So I think Robert will be one of the biggest benefactors there. Now we're going to go to tight ends, and tight ends get a little, tight end position, guys, is very interesting. And unfortunately, Bonnie added one of my tight ends that I like, but I know why he's overvalued. So when we look at this, we're talking about Evan Ingram and to me, Mark Andrews. But talking about Ingram, I liked him last year. He did not finish high. He finished as tight end 14, I believe, in PPR formats. What do you think of Ingram?
I'm over Evan Ingram.
Yeah.
I am over him. Do you realize, okay, he was healthy all year. 4th most targets amongst tight ends last year, and it was tight end 15.
Yeah,
that's okay. His average points per game, it was 8.8. That's the worst it's been in the last 3 years for him. I'm done. I'm over it. I mean, you can blame it on Daniel Jones. I don't, but it just he's gone from not healthy to pretty good to worse. So
I think the Jones thing, Barkley going down and that, yes. I don't take away, trust me, as a Dallas fan, Jason Garrett is a terrible offensive coordinator. So he doesn't necessarily know how to use Ingram. I don't think Ingram's a tight end. I think Ingram should be a slot receiver / hybrid kind of player, and they don't put him in those positions. But I'm not making excuses for Ingram because he drops the damn ball too much. There's issues with Ingram at that level. I think maybe with the addition of Galladay, that will help Ingram a little bit. And I think with the addition of Barkley, obviously, will help too. Again, he's going as tight end 11. Other guys after him, I think his value is okay. I understand where people come from, though, where he's saying he's overvalued because I think he was getting drafted way too high last year. I don't know. And then, we put on here our overvalued guys. I would rather probably take a shot at Ingram than my guy, which is Mark Andrews, to be honest. That's kind of how I feel based on where they're going. Mark Andrews is going right now as tight end 5. Mark Andrews is okay. He finished as tight end 6 last year, but if you look at where the tight ends finished last year, after the top 2, there was just a massive, just a clumble of this. Everybody's kind of in there. So I don't really look at where he finished there. I really worried about, like when we talk about Lamar, accuracy. I know he targets Mark Andrews, and I know that's part of it. But if they do upgrade, let's say they get a guy like Rashad Bateman, they get some of these other guys in there. I think that's going to hurt his targets. Last year Andrews had 88 targets. He had 55 catches, 700 yards. He did have 7 touchdowns. I think that he's kind of touchdown dependent. So when you looked at kind of his 2019 year, which he did really good, he had 10. He had 10 touchdowns. If Andrews isn't scoring a touchdown, he's definitely hurting you in fantasy. And I just think he's too overvalued for me to take that shot on as tight end 5. So when you're looking at kind of where Andrews is at, I definitely would rather take Noah Fant, which is going 2 rounds later. I'm cool with taking 2 rounds later with Noah Fant and the upside there. Maybe even Irv Smith. He's going to tight end 10. He's going in the ADPs of 110. So I'm not if I'm not getting Kittle, Kelsey, or Waller, I'm not reaching for these other guys. That's just kind of my opinion.
Yeah, the point that you made about Evan Ingram, you made a good point with about Kenny Galladay. Yeah. He really hasn't played with a great complement of wide receivers. I looked at their numbers, and last year the targets were pretty evenly split between him, Darius Slayton, and Sterling Shepard. Mm-hmm. If he had somebody who was that the defenses have to pay a little more attention to, like Galladay, maybe he will see his numbers go up. So that's a good point there.
Yeah, we could see that, right? We could see it. He definitely needs to stop dropping the ball. So when we're looking at his drop percentage and his carries, he has it. And I think the Garrett factor is a big thing. Can Jones take that next leap? I think why I think he can be overvalued is because there's too many ifs when I look at a prospect is how many ifs am I getting here? Well, I feel like, well, he could be good if. Well, if this works, and then you get into this like, hey, I just want a guy that's good.
Right. We always thought the if was, oh, if only he could play all 16 games.
Yeah.
Well, he did, and he ended up tight end 15. So, so that's a tough one for. I guess it's probably, how like when you're burned by a player, like you're really reluctant to draft that player again.
Yeah.
Kind of where I am with Evan Ingram. I'm kind of like over it. All right, you burned me enough, burn me once, fool me twice, that sort of thing. So,
and that's what Dynasty's about. And that's one other area that we talk about with Dynasty at the tight end position. When you get if you're not getting a great top tight 3 end, it's kind of like, hey, who's going to be these guys? And what do you think we're going to see the same year as we saw last year, whereas the top 2, Kittle got hurt, and then just the same, or maybe we'll see a leveling off at the position? What is your opinion there?
I think we're going to see much more of the same. We might have 1 or 2 that sneak up in there, top 5 that might push for like Darren Waller numbers or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's Kyle Pitts coming in this year that, is he a wide receiver as a tight end? I don't know. He has tight end behind his name. So can he end up there in the top 5 in his rookie season? But as of right now, there's just such a big drop off from those top 3-4 guys. It's ridiculous. I think there is a huge advantage if it's a tight end mandatory start league, taking one of those guys. But then again, too, there's value in drafting. Okay, I'm going to go into my undervalued guys.
That's it.
Like Cole Kmet. He's coming off the board at tight end 17. He definitely has top 12 potential.
Yeah.
He averaged 6 targets a game in the last 6 games of the season last year. Jimmy Graham's probably going bye-bye. I mean, he's only 35 years old. He's not Tom Brady. No, just kidding. But I know Dalton doesn't like throwing to his tight ends very much, but Cole Kmet's a huge target. I mean, he's 6'6", Even if he just stands there in the red zone like Gronk, he can be in the top 10 too.
Yeah.
And he's definitely has the talent. So if you don't get one of the top dudes, then you need to target somebody like a Cole Kmet.
I like that call. He's going around the Troutman area and those guys. Some other guys that I put on here. I always got to mention Brevin Jordan because he's my guy. He's going as tight end 19. I think that Brevin fits NFL so perfect wherever he goes. I would love to see Brevin go to Arizona. I would love to see Brevin go to Jacksonville. As far as Logan Thomas goes, I don't know what you feel about Logan Thomas. I just bumped him up a little bit just because I think if Logan Thomas can have a good year with Fitz, and they kind of fit in that offense. They have a dynamic wide receivers now with Samuel going there, and then with McLaurin and Fitzpatrick always targets his tight ends. And so I like him for next year. He's a good dynasty asset to have because you could probably unload him, especially at this position, which is scarce. And with him going into that tight end 12 range, I don't hate it. Maybe you wait on him and then grab a Jordan like in the tight end 19 range as your backup for your tight end position. So that's kind of why I added those 2 guys, or Kmet. Yeah, or Kmet, right? Like he's around that same time frame. What if you grab Thomas then Kmet? That's kind of my opinion of him.
I had to do a little studying on him. He is a big yards after catch guy. Your Brevin Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
He had the most yards after the catch by a tight end last year, and that was over Kyle Pitts. So, I like what I saw. From the little bit of studying I did on him. So yeah, he was definitely somebody. If you're gonna take an Evan Ingram, maybe take Brevin Jordan.
Well, I'm glad I could help you out, Bonnie, because I'm telling you, draft Brevin Jordan. Okay, you guys out there, the divide between him and Pitts isn't as big as people want to make it out to be. I think Pitts is amazing. Brevin's pretty damn good too. He's just had some injuries and some issues there, but the volume and what he's put up in college, Brevin was the number one tight end coming into college. And then, Pitts is obviously done what Pitts has done. But I think Jordan Fitz offense is just as well. So those are some guys there. Now, what we want to do really quick, I'm going to go through some guys. We're going to do it kind of quick. And I just want you to kind of give me yes, no, and like a 1 or 2 sentence, would you do it, would you not, of some veteran players that maybe are worth taking a shot on. Would you do it? I know the answer to your first one, which is going to be funny, but I put this list together and I put Jared Goff down. He's going as QB 29, so he's going, one of the last QBs off the board. He did finish 2020 as QB 15, so I do want to give him a little bit of shout out there. But are you taking a risk on Goff at all?
Yuck. One word answer. Yuck.
Yeah.
He regressed. He regressed so much from one year to the next. Now he's going to a team that just shipped all its offensive weapons off.
Yeah.
I mean, is he really supposed to get better in Detroit? No, his mechanics. He just. I'm sure you watched games. If anybody watched the games, and I don't care what the numbers said at the end. He might have been okay for fantasy, but if you actually watched him, it was hard. It was cringeworthy. No. And like I said, no Marvin Jones, no Kenny Galladay.
Yeah.
He's going to be throwing the ball to DeAndre Swift. So, I
don't think he's worth the risk until they upgrade their offensive positions. If they do upgrade their offensive positions, if he's the last quarterback where you could stream him later, okay. But I agree with you there. What about Zach Ertz? He's going off the board, tied in 23. He didn't have a great year last year. We know that. But is he worth a rate round, like you're tied in 2 or 3?
Oh, I think so. I mean, he was plagued by injuries a lot last year.
Yeah.
Philadelphia and Carson Wentz played behind a horrible O-line. But, they were playing with 5 new starters at points last season. I think if Zach Ertz can find the right landing spot, hopefully Indy, with Carson Wentz, then he can definitely produce for you. He could end up in the top 12. I can see that. And if you need more than one tight end, he's definitely a good pick where he's going. I don't think there's a lot of risk involved there.
No, where he's going is pretty solid. If he went with Wentz, that would be probably my ideal spot. If he could get to Indianapolis, I think that his value would shoot up. So get him now. And you can maybe get him in some tight end premium leagues and some other leagues right now for pretty cheap. So he's a guy to take a on. One guy left that I was going to mention is T.Y. Hilton. I don't know what you think of T.Y. We don't know where he's going yet. So if you listen to this podcast, we watch on YouTube, we don't know the landing spot yet. He's been rumored for a few places, but the market's not going to be the hottest for T.Y. and these wide receivers because of all the talent that we saw. Right now he's going as wide receiver 85. So he's definitely dropped off a bit. Do you – at any point, is there a team maybe or any way that you think maybe his value will shoot up that you could see him realistically having a pretty good year?
I don't know. I think what the team needs are right now. Let's see. Well, you want to put him in if he goes to Detroit, forget it. With Goff. I mean, T.Y. to me, well, he's pretty good handling some of the short stuff, but to me, all his flashy plays came on long balls. So I'd certainly like to see him go somewhere. Somebody who throws a long ball, maybe Arizona actually, because Christian Kirk didn't. I mean, Hopkins is there.
AJ Green. I guess they just signed one.
I forgot they signed him, but
or wide receiver. I mean, there's a lot of weird places. He could go back to Indy. That's still a possibility that we could see. I don't think that necessarily hurts his or helps his value.
I would like it better if he stayed in Indy. I mean, he had some big things towards the end of the year last year there.
So I could see that. I mean, at wide receiver 85. At this, what the hell? At this point, maybe you can get him as someone like that you can kick a shot on. But you got to be worried hey, I thought Emmanuel Sanders was going to be a kind of a sleeper pick last year going into the season, and then he did nothing. And well, I can't say he did nothing, but that's kind of what you're going to get from a guy like this at the age and the injuries there. So those are some veterans that you might be able to take worth the risk on. Obviously, Jared Goff is not on Bonnie's Christmas list. That's definitely got to happen, but that's all right. That's okay there. I appreciate her coming on. If you're on social media, especially on Twitter, you can follow her at Fantasy Queen Bee. She's a great follow. She's a great writer. I respect all of her work, especially her recent Fantasy Pro stuff. You definitely got to take a look at that. Bonnie, why don't you tell us what you got coming next? What is something that you're going to be working on next that we can definitely see in the next couple of weeks and that we can look out for you?
Actually, I'll be working on early Dynasty values.
Okay.
That will be dropping next week sometime.
Okay.
On Fantasy Pros. So.
All right. Well, good. Well, hey, check that out, especially with the Fantasy Pro stuff. She does great work. I'll definitely be sending that out as well so you can see it once it's on there. Everybody listening to the podcast, we appreciate you guys. Hopefully you listen to this overvalued, undervalued assets. Any guys that we said were kind of overvalued right now, you might want to try to move, especially if you're going to trade and try to get some picks and get some younger players. Undervalued wise, here's some guys that we really would think that you should try to grab. Tyler Boyd, Robbie Anderson, as we heard. Disrespectful, Robbie.
Did you get all that? If not, make sure you head over to hammercast.com, subscribe, and join the Hammer Nation. Until next time, keep grinding.